Kept it secret. His mom didn't know. I didn't know. Supposedly, nobody knew, except his group of people.
Down here is where the feds say it was all coming together. The apparent plan to kidnap and kill the governor pieced together in meetings held after business hours. Once Brian Titus, longtime owner of the Vac Shack, had left for home.
They were really tight-lipped because they know if they got out, they were going to prison.
The man investigators say was leading the operation, Adam Fox, president of a group calling itself the Michigan Patriot 3 Percenters, had been living in the dark, cramped underground space.
He had nowhere to go. We took him up, And I tried over the years to have him working for me. I was kind of like father figure for him. Now, not no more, forget it. Me and Mr. Fox is done. Forever.
According to the government, Fox began the process of recruiting other like-minded people after attending a June 6, 2020 meeting in Dublin, Ohio. He and 13 others gathered and began discussing the creation of a new self-sufficient society based on the Bill of Rights. Within weeks, Barry Croft Jr. and Ty Garbin joined the core group as it continued to come together. What they didn't know, an undercover informant had already infiltrated them.
So now the government has somebody who was on the inside, who was not working for the government prior to charges.
The group met again in the Vac Shack basement on June 20th, where they tossed around, quote, assaulting the Michigan State Capitol, countering law enforcement first responders, and using Molotov cocktails to destroy police cars. Fox also brought up the idea of abducting the governor, trying her for treason themselves, and then executing her before the November 2020 elections.
But when you cross that thin line like he did, forget it. Kidnap the governor? Are you freaking kidding me? Who does that?
On June 28th and the weekend of July 10th, 2020, the men attended field training exercises at properties in Munith, Michigan and Cambria, Wisconsin. On July 27th, they were back at the Vac Shack, where Fox proposed abducting Whitmer near her home or vacation property, saying, quote, snatch and grab, man. Grab the f***ing governor. Just grab the bitch. Because at that point, we do that, dude, it's over. They would continue meeting over the next few weeks, moving their communications to an encrypted chat platform.
I have zero patience for immoral coward criminals, okay? And guess what? I'm sick of being robbed and enslaved by the state, period.
On August 29th, Fox and others went to conduct recon on Whitmer's vacation home up north, taking these photos. The undercover informant with Fox on the trip later passed off this hand-drawn map to the FBI. The group apparently looking at how long it would take law enforcement to respond should they attempt something. One of them later suggesting in a chat that they could blow up a nearby bridge to slow down their response time.
If we're doing a recon or something and we come up on some of them, dude, you better not give them a chance. You either tell them to go right now or else they're gonna die, period.
Later, on September 12th, several of the men traveled back to her vacation property, this time stopping at a bridge on M31 to inspect the feasibility of placing an explosive underneath. Unbeknownst to the group, an undercover FBI agent was now among their ranks. Introduced to them as Red, this is a screenshot from a video Red sent the guys to demonstrate his supposed expertise in explosives and demolition. By September 30th, 2020, the government says the group was finalizing their plans to kidnap and kill the governor.
They are the enemy, period.
Adam Fox bought a taser, allegedly for the planned operation. But the group was infiltrated over and over again. The government would eventually have 11 undercover informants and 2 undercover FBI agents, including Red, recording the group's meetings and phone calls, amassing over 1,000 hours of audio throughout the investigation. They were making plans to raise $4,000 to purchase explosives and tactical gear from Red, the undercover FBI agent. When several of the members drove to meet up with Red, they were arrested, and soon we would become aware of the death and destruction they were apparently getting ready to unleash. Over the course of the investigation into the 6 men eventually charged in the plot, approximately 1,000 hours of audio and video were recorded. Prosecutors are expected to play around 2 hours of audio and video during the trial, along with hundreds of other pieces of evidence, including training schedules, tactical equipment, 12 firearms, and photos of improvised explosive devices, all to try and prove that these men entered into a legitimate conspiracy to kidnap the sitting governor of Michigan.
Conspiracy is just simply this. It is an agreement between 2 or more people to commit an underlying offense. It is the agreement that is the crime. But you got to prove the agreement, and that's always the hard part, because the only way you prove an agreement is if people who are involved in the conspiracy tell you there was one.
But that is exactly what the government has. 2 of the men originally charged, Ty Garbin and Caleb Franks, have flipped on their co-defendants and entered into plea agreements with prosecutors. Both have agreed to testify on their behalf.
In federal prosecutions involving conspiracies of any kind, drug cases, conspiracies like this, one thing that does happen is that certain people are essentially offered cooperation deals, and that can sometimes strongly support the government's case.
But of course, the defense will fight back against their version of the case.
Other times, those cooperation deals just point out that this whole entire case is built on the government creating essentially a false narrative or a false crime.
The defense will allege that there was no criminal conspiracy, and any potential criminal activity only occurred because of actions taken by undercover agents and informants, essentially that the men were entrapped.
The defense has to establish first that there was misconduct by the police, but then has to establish that his client was not predisposed to commit the crime, or some evidence to that extent.
While there were a total of 11 undercover informants involved, only 3 have been named in court documents: CHS Dan, Steve Robeson, and Jenny. The government has said they don't plan to call Jenny or Steve Robeson to testify during the trial, likely because, as prosecutors explained during a January motion hearing, that Robeson was, quote, removed as a government informant when the government found out he was playing both sides. They also allege he asked another informant in the group to destroy some evidence.
If his conversations were recorded, and someone who's listening to it can identify whose voices are on the tape, then they don't need this guy, because what he's going to testify to is on a tape recording.
So while recordings made by Robeson could be introduced, he won't be called as a state witness. But CHS Dan, who defense attorneys have called the backbone of the government's case, will testify extensively. He was present at almost all of the meetings that were recorded. There were also 2 undercover FBI agents moving among the Wolverine Watchmen, known to the group as just Red and Mark. The government asked last week to allow the agents to testify under those pseudonyms at trial, saying it would protect them in future undercover terrorism investigations. But Judge Robert Yonker denied the request, saying prosecutors would have to reveal their true identities a day before they take the stand.
They're there to be cross-examined if they have exculpatory evidence, and their backgrounds are above reproach for the most part, because they are, in fact, law enforcement officers.
We do know the identities of the 3 FBI handlers overseeing the investigation. Defense attorneys have been quick to point out that Agent Richard Trask recently pleaded guilty to a domestic assault charge in Kalamazoo. Agent Jason Chambers has been accused of trying to profit on the outcome of the investigation through a side business he formed, and Agent Henrik Impala has been accused by a defense attorney in another unrelated case of perjury. But prosecutors say these points are not relevant to the case at hand. They also used 2 undercover FBI agents. Now, with a case that has become deeply political, what happens at trial will be left up to the 12 men and women who are seated in the jury box.